Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first webinar of Matrix Type Technologies on designing and governing Agentic AI orchestration. My name is Usman Nadi, and I'm the CEO and founder of Matrix Type Technologies. Uh, and I'm joined today by David, a good friend, David Loin. He's a TOGAF certified enterprise architect, currently working with Bosa Properties as a solution architect. He has over 25 years of experience helping organizations with technology transformations. He is also specialized in AI governance frameworks, enterprise architecture, data strategy implementation, and he has developed comprehensive governance models for responsible AI adoption that address data privacy, model integrity, and ethical deployment. His practical experience spans establishing enterprise architecture policies, practices, leading SOC 2 compliance initiatives, and designing large-scale data platforms across diverse industries, including technology, utility, transportation, and real estate. So he has a consulting practice called AdSense.io and has guided multiple organizations in a variety of solutions and initiatives. So, David, the floor is yours.
Okay, let me just
Please.
share my screen so everybody can see. Okay, thank you very much. It's welcome aboard. My background, as Usman told me, Usman told me, is I'm an enterprise architect by trade. I've been in business intelligence for 30 odd years, developing projects, running PMOs, doing data transformation projects, building applications, building all manner of things to solve companies' problems. And so that's sort of accumulating me finalizing and getting my enterprise architecture certification with TOGAF in the last year or two. But for the last 5-6 years, I've been working as an enterprise architect for a variety of companies, building out strategies, building out products, and helping them actually navigate and transform for the future. And so today we're going to be talking about agentic orchestration because there's a lot of buzz and a lot of discussion about, hey, AI can be used in an organization. I was talking to Usman and talking with various people at some of the conferences in the last couple of months, and this sort of talk came out of that not many people really understand what needs to be done and what needs to be sort of taken from an enterprise, from the executive class, what needs to be pushed down into the business and what support they need to give. So this talk is aiming to help you guys drive the project and deliver successful AI orchestration systems. So what we can do is, there's a 2-day seminar, so we're going to have in the second seminar, I think early next year. We haven't planned the date yet, but the second seminar is going to go into a bit more detail. We'll tailor it based on questions arising today as well. But the aim is to push deeper into how we actually scale and how you actually build out and govern a working AI system. But today we're going to be talking about how you actually conceptualize, develop, and push it forward. So this talk is aimed for the C-suite, board members, VP levels, and enterprise architects. And it's trying to get you ready for implementing AI so you have the right questions, the right background, and you're able to answer people's questions sensibly, and some of the hype can be dismissed. AI is a massively moving subject. I wrote this presentation initially 6 weeks ago. In the last 6 weeks, I would say probably about 50% of the slides have changed based on information. And even when I ran through and did a fact check this morning using one of my orchestrations, it pointed out some places where some of my facts may be wrong or may be incorrect now because things have changed and new publications and new reports have come out. So anyway, let's get on with the presentation today. So the agenda today is we're going to look at the market context and give a reality check. So we're going to sort of hopefully frame AI in a better context for you guys, and so that you're able to position it within your organization effectively, and also convey the risks, the kind of trepidations, and what needs to be considered when you do it. We're also going to talk about multi-LLM strategies, how to actually spread your cost and be more cost effective. And then architecture patterns, deployment models, how do you actually deploy it? And then the lovely favorite, security, compliance, and governance, which is where most projects fail, because we fail on either security or we fail on compliance or we fail on governance and we don't manage it properly. And then talking about how we implement and what success factors we measure for that. And you have to excuse if I seem to be looking at different places. I've got about 6 screens in front of me, and the presentation's running off about 6 different screens at the moment. Okay, so let's look at the market landscape. So AI adoption is high. A lot of companies want to do AI. They want to go that pathway. They realize there's value to it. Good companies and the kind of the high level, the high performers will generally see about a $3 plus for every dollar invested. They're seeing $3. The really good ones are getting between 5 to 10 investment. I can give you a reference sheet after this document if you want to actually see where the sources are for this information. The productivity gain, AI gets your productivity kicking. It changes the way you work. It changes the way that we conceptualize our problems. If you want to map AI to existing processes, it's best not to. It's best to look at those processes and work out, can we do it better? Can we do it differently? And can we use AI to do that? And then work out what that sort of impact will be. So let's go through these adoption things. So market maturity, people are using scaling with Agentic AI. We're building multiple bots. We're building orchestrations so that we're able to actually task individual agents to go and do particular tasks. So when you build an orchestration, you say, you're the orchestrator, you're going to coordinate these 5 or 6 agents. They're going to do things like research gathering. They're going to do things like consolidation of data. Other ones are going to verify that data they see against other sources and come back with a factual report. And then it's a way of actually making the system work. If you just use a single agent, you end up repeating yourself. You end up getting it falling over itself as you try to change the complex to try and get it to understand more complex behaviors. Roughly about 39% of organizations are experimenting with AI, and that could mean that we're considering it right through to actually we're implementing, actively doing AI. Need to be, oh, sorry, dropped out. So a lot of AI is done on the side of the desk, so you need to be sort of aware of side projects and make sure you have a hold on those as well, so you don't have AI projects springing up out of nowhere, blindsiding your regulation or governance people. And then the prediction is roughly 40% of companies will have agents in operation in day-to-day work at their company by about 2026. And then for the dollar investment, a lot of AI initiatives fail. And it's a horrible figure, but if you look at the Industrial Revolution, a large number of companies failed, but the innovation that arose from those failures was fantastic. So if you have an AI failing initiative, work out why it failed, use those as lessons learned, and retry again. It's not worth getting left behind. It's worth actioning, and it's worth learning from your mistakes. Talk to other people in the market who are doing the similar things to you, find out what they're doing that's solving the problem. Ask the real hard questions to them, how is it working, rather than let them explain what they've done. Because sometimes when you dig into the how, you find it's not quite doing what they say it's doing, but be careful. Talk and do the community. We are here to help, and we can actually give you guidance as well. And the productivity gain side of it, if you move early into this market, you're going to get far greater productivity gains. If you look at the number of AI products that are blossoming, that are being written in the market I'm currently working, which is residential development, we're seeing a lot of AI contenders coming up with brand new tools they develop using AI. They're selling it into the market. We're wary about what they can do, but some are actually proving to be quite useful. And some are really, really bad. But you have to be very, very diligent. But there are a lot of people who are potentially going to make some good money from AI engines and AI developments. Okay, so let's go on to the next bit. Why does this matter? Why should we do Agentic AI? And really, it's a platform shift. It's sort of, we got to make sure that for Agentic AI, it's a way of using these engines effectively. It's a way of actually enabling them to be, it's enabling to do a series of actions self-autonomously, but it's also making sure that there's governance involved, not only from the company itself, from the board level, but there's also governance within the system itself, that it can actually do its own checks and balances. You always need a human in the loop, but you can actually leave some AI systems to work largely independently and come up with some very good results. And some of the results they come up with are very interesting, that they actually come up with unique ways of solving problems. Because they're also good at solving some problems, they're also good at circumnavigating controls. So that, hence the human in the loop. When we're doing AI agents, we need to make sure we can integrate with our systems. AI is no good without data. So one thing it's going to push is your integration capability within the organization. It's make sure you can get to your data, make sure your data is in a good state. Hence the buzz for a lot of AI governance, data governance discussion at the moment, because a lot of people are realizing their integrations are weak, their data quality is weak, and they need to improve it to roll out AI. Again, it's something that needs to be worked on, but it enables AI to really sing. And then we've got a lot of regulations coming down the pipeline. As governments get aware that AI has this power, they want to put regulation. European AI Act has got a lot of restrictions about what you can and cannot do with AI. And if you want to operate in a European market, you'll have to be cognizant of those things, but also these acts generally spread to other governments, so your region may suddenly start taking up and adopting these standards. And then on the strategic side, we want to make sure that these systems are designed well, not as an impediment to fast development, but you need to understand the risks and the governance, hence for this talk to happen today. Okay, so next one is, why are we suggesting a multi-LLM? Most of you probably use ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or DeepSeek or various other forms of AI agents. You notice that it has strengths and weaknesses in the way it operates. If you do a multi-agent system, you want to use the best of breed. So you want to understand that this LLM is good at doing this particular task. This LLM is really good at doing this other task. One of my orchestrations I have is a code development orchestration. It uses Claude to do the code. It uses Codex to do the code reviews. And then I use Perplexity and ChatGPT to write the specifications and the enterprise architecture documents to feed into that system. So between those systems, they all work. And one of the nice benefits is, because I'm self-orchestrating, I can have a locally hosted LLM when I'm doing really sensitive data. I can run that through and have some very sensitive work totally contained within my own system, and I'm protecting my IP. It doesn't get out into these other systems. And so when you go multi-provider, you get the best of pricing. You can work out where you should spend it, where you should actually focus, what agent is going to give you the best value for your money. DeepSeek is very cheap to use, and it has very good strengths in some aspects. Claude has other aspects, but it's a lot more expensive to use. On average, you've got to work out what your cost sensitivity is, what the agent is going to do. You can use multi-agent to actually optimize your cost. Capability matching, you want to make sure that what you're asking the agent to do matches what the agent can do well. You don't really want to go and get a agent that's been trained on generating videos to actually write code for you. It won't necessarily do a good job. So you've got to make sure you match how your systems are working well. Vendor independence, again, vendors change their prices, they change their EULAs, they change their privacy restrictions. Again, having independence gives you the ability to move away from vendors that are not actually protecting your data properly. And then also with regulation, you can move to the vendors that have the right compliance measures in place. And so when we're doing it, it gives us the ability to isolate ourselves from the changing AI sub-market, as it were. And it also enables us to build in a robust way. You can swap the agent out and you can see the results, and you can see whether that agent is better than the previous agent used to have for the same architecture, for the same system. Okay, so let's look at the different tools we have in this system. So the AI landscape changes. This is of December. This slide, every time I rerun my fact checker, this slide changes. New versions are issued, new costs are having, it changes. So be aware of what your model can do. Look at a couple of models, work out what you want to host, what size of model you want to do, look at what the capabilities are. And so when you have that, you match your model to the task. You look at the cost of that model in operation. You work out, can another model doing cheaper? You swap out to that new model. You keep your provider abstracted so that you don't get yourself tied into, we can only use Claude, or we can only use this, or use a particular library. And then you also plan for rapid evolution. AI changes rapidly. The way you develop changes rapidly. The way you prompt changes rapidly. When I'm doing my coding tranches using AI, I find that I have to change my prompts on a weekly basis. I've subscribed to multiple threads on Reddit who discuss how prompts are done. There's a lot of breaking ground. There's a lot of weird ideas that people have about making prompts more effective. have someone in your organization who is aware of that and is able to move with it. So moving on from the landscape, what we want to do is look at the frameworks again. So how do we actually build out the frameworks? What do we have? So what you want to do is, when you look at your organization, where is your skill set? I'm currently helping an organization with an AI implementation. They're largely based in Amazon, and they want to stick with the Amazon tech stack as much as they possibly can. So they're looking at something like Amazon Q. They're looking at various other systems within Amazon to actually help them out. But they also may consider other AI engines and bringing those in. So they may even do hosting of containers to run some of the Open Llama stuff, or LangChain, sorry, and then they'll have various ways, but they're looking at what they can support, what they can build, and they want to build that experience in-house. Using a vendor to build this stuff out, you're going to lose that knowledge once the vendor leads. So you want to make sure that if you do employ a vendor, you make sure that vendor is going to train your team at the same time in what they're doing, so that you can grow with the vendor and you can grow to help how the system works. You also understand how you're going to deploy this AI into production. What is your plan for that? Are you going to deploy purely side of the desk? Are we going to use this as an information? Or are we using it more as, well, we're going to go formally into production. We're going to have a full CI/CD pipeline. We're going to deploy it with full governance in place. Make those decisions up front. And when you're doing your roadmap, which I'll get to at the end of this deck, have those questions in mind. And then also you're looking at community support, which platforms are supported. If you look at something like Kamuda, or you look at something like N8N for AI workflows, they have different levels of support, they have different costs. N8N is a very new environment. It's quite messy, but it is growing rapidly and it's gaining quite a good following of community out there, people developing frameworks, people supporting it, people posting workflows they've done. So if you're prepared to research, there is a lot of really good features. And then also you're going to match the enterprise features to your organization. If your organization is a large volume data, large number usage system, you want an AI system and orchestration that can suit that well. Okay, it's just a message on the chat. And so we got various things. So in some ways, when we're going for the recommendation I would make on your initial thing, use something like LangChain or Crew AI for doing your work. If you're a Microsoft shop, AutoGen, Semantic Kernel are going to help you out. There's a reasonable framework for that. It will tie into some of your other systems. But LangChain, I've seen some very successful build outs using LangChain and get your feet wet and it can get your toes dipped into the water well. Okay, so then how do we actually build this stuff out? So what is the pattern? So when we look at the industry pattern, you want to separate concerns in your orchestration. So you want your ways, how are you going to get the data displayed to your users? How are your users going to interact with that? So if you look at N8N, there's plugins to chatbots, so you can actually interface with WhatsApp, which I think is going away because WhatsApp changed their API restrictions. But you've got ways into Slack, you've got ways into Teams, you've got ways of actually putting a bot or an agent into your team so you can then call an orchestration workflow from that. And so if you want to do document analysis, you can go to your team site onto the channel saying, please analyze this document, give me a report of it. It uploads through Teams, it's sent to the AI engine, it does its summary, and it returns back with a result, say, this is the summary of the document I had. And because you're using Teams, you have audit capability as well. And because you're in various endpoints, you know who's uploaded what and what sort of responses you get, so you can monitor how the system is working. And then also you need APIs so you can plug into your integration systems. So when you're building an API service layer, you can access the agents using that so your tools can talk to each other. And then you also want to make sure that whoever contacts your system is authenticated. So how do you make sure you do that? That's all done through the presentation layer. The orchestration layer is really where how the workflows of the agents are coordinated. So it's basically for LangChain, it's a coding library of a set of classes that will go ahead and call up the agents it knows about and say, I've got a task. It breaks the task down. It then passes those to the execution layers, and then it starts working on what it actually wants to do. And the execution layer is where bulk of the work is done. It's where it can read your documents if you have a RAG or you have a knowledge store, vector stores, ontologies, all these other ways of storing information that the AI agents can use. So if you build out a nice 3-tier layer, keep it separate, keep it controlled, you actually end up with a very good implementation. And then the next question is, when we build or buy. A lot of companies are looking at doing a build out where there's some people are talking about build, some talking about using SaaS platforms. You hear a lot of the sovereignty questions. It's the same questions that happen with the cloud. When that emerged, is what is my sovereignty on my data? Understand your sovereignty needs, but I would recommend when you're testing your AI out, use a SaaS platform, make sure you're using less sensitive data, but something that's effective to your organization, that you can actually get your feet wet. You can test out how it works, and you don't have to worry about building out all this orchestration in the back end in your own systems or your own cloud environment to make this work. So if you use something like N8N, or you use Commuter, or you use LangChain, or you go for AutoGen, Semantic Kernel, or Amazon Q, and various other systems, you have a way of a controlled environment where you can actually test and build your stuff out. So understand the cost to do that, understand the volume costs, what those break-evens are, understand where you are looking to say, if we pass in 10,000 records, how much is that going to cost us? If we pass in 100,000 records, it's going to cost us even more data. What are we paying for? Make sure you know those different models. And so when you choose your SaaS platform, you understand what your cost steps are going to be, when you're going to incur more cost. And then you can actually make the sensible decision of, okay, we have data, we have cost, we can now build a custom platform. This is how much money we should put aside for it, because now you've got a budget aside, worked out a cost saving you can do with that. So start SaaS, then build, but build if where the only case where build comes first is when you have very, very sensitive IP that you can't let out and you need to have full control over it, or when you have some value proposition which is so unique or so niche, you don't want that idea to bleed out. Because if you look at something like ChatGPT, there were cases where people believe that ChatGPT is reading their responses and then passing them into the Gestalt. And then people like ChatGPT can actually read those answers, and they're actually mining that for data. It goes back to the old days like Google, where Google mined your emails for marketing information. Is it legal? Is it done? There's data. They're going to help. They want to go and extract value from that data. And if you're not paying for the service, you're more likely to have your data extracted. So you could potentially lose ideas by using weird clouds. But again, understand what your risks are, understand what you need to do.
So, David, I have a question here.
Yep.
How would you compare, you mentioned frameworks, so how would you compare LangChain with N8N or other frameworks? If you could actually just elaborate a bit, because you seem
Mhm.
to have a bias towards LangChain, so I just wanted to understand.
I use N8N on some cases because I find N8N is very useful for building out these webhooks where you want to have it working in a cloud environment. If you use the kind of the commercial community edition of LangChain on N8N, you can give it an IP address, a webhook that it can connect to without you having to set up that cloud infrastructure. If you use LangChain and you want a webhook, it's a little bit different because you're locally hosting the LangChain on your own machines. You have to provide an IP address that the webhook can hit you on. But if it's internal to your system, LangChain makes some things easier, but there's a lot more code involved in LangChain. So LangChain requires code. N8N is basically a drag and drop, no code type environment. So they have their strengths and their weaknesses.
Right. So if you want basically more elaborate workflows, then you would go with LangChain. But
Yeah.
generally, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
And that
LangChain is
would,
more designed around orchestration. N8N is more designed around workflow automation
yeah,
as well.
fair enough. Right. Thank
And
you.
so you watch some of the orchestration designs that people have done in N8N, they're getting better as the nodes get better to do it. So now you can add multiple agents in on a node. You can actually do a little bit better orchestration. But a month ago, in the old days, you used to have to actually do loops within the N8N environment to actually call different orchestrations. So you
So
had to be, you had.
we can have the hybrid approach. Like we can have an N8N and then with approach using that with LangChain. That is possible. You've seen that?
You can call in. I mean, you've basically got webhooks that can connect between the two, so you can pass messages through webhooks if you want, or through API calls into those systems. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
If anybody else has any questions, just post them in the chat. I will answer them if I see them. I've got a chat window up on one of my machines, so I should be able to answer questions when they're posted. Okay, so let's look at deployment. Really, most people are doing cloud first because cloud works. It's easier to set up. You just basically create your agent, you go to your chat window, it calls it, it's done. And then there are various tools that run within the cloud that enable you to set it up. It's a good way to go. It's probably the most sensible way. If you're going to do your data, you can get control. If you look at something like Microsoft's EULA agreements for privacy, they have some reasonably good privacy controls. They are compliant under most regulations on privacy, and they will protect your data reasonably well. When you go to other systems, let's say DeepSeek, the privacy is a little bit more blurry. But again, China does have a Personal Protection Act, and they do have various regulations because they realize they need to compete in the market so people can trust them. And so cloud deployments are becoming more ubiquitous. It's a cleaner way because you don't have to maintain the infrastructure. You don't have to maintain different pieces. It works well, and it works in most use cases. A hybrid model where you use a sort of cloud and locally or private cloud hosted models suits certain cases where you have data that needs to be protected and you don't want to pass it into a cloud model because you know it's sensitive. It's either IP sensitive to your customers, or it's sensitive to your industry, to what your speciality are, or you have regulations about what you can share with that model. So knowing what data you're passing in and what type of information you expect in the LLM to process or the agent to process is when you start looking at your hybrid private cloud or locally hosted. And then on-prem is a low number at the moment because maintaining a very set of servers at home or at your office is a speciality we seem to have lost recently. We don't have many IT service people who can manage a server room anymore. And so on-prem is good for certain things. I had one client and we were doing on-prem, but that's because the GPU costs were far exceeding the cost of maintaining our own GPU hardware processor. But we were processing also medical imaging. And so we had to be able to process 24/7, and our GPU costs were going into the thousands of dollars a month. It's going to peaking at 1,000 a day for some of these things. And buying a server to run that process was a fraction of the price. And so we're able to build up a reasonably good CUDA box that could do that processing. It was locally hosted. It heated up our office quite heavily, but it actually made practical sense in that situation. But again, it's a special case. Any questions on deployment before I go on? Okay, I'll keep moving through.
Yeah, if you could, I think just for the audience
Yeah.
sake, if you could actually explain the on-prem side of it a bit, because
Yeah.
not many people are very familiar or comfortable with that idea. So I know you have done a lot of experimentation around it, but doing LLMs on your laptop. So
Yeah, no,
if you could just
I run a couple of my own personal setup is I have a few repurposed laptops to run agents at home. And so I have a 6 or 7 agent orchestration that does research for me. And that runs on all my old laptops. And so depending what I'm running, they're running locally hosted models, and it makes it good. The on-prem is getting the hardware, it's maintaining the hardware, it's maintaining the update. So it's, again, it's bringing back a server room into your organization. There are more devices coming out. Lenovo produce what amounts to an LLM in a box machine, which I think is about $5,000 USD at the moment, which is a reasonably powerful machine that can run actually a 300 billion parameter model. I'm looking forward to trying to get my hands on one in the next 6 months so I can test it out, or whatever the best breed at that time is, because that solves some of the building model things out, and it solves some of your protection, or if you actually want to build your own LLMs, having these machines gives you the power to, it saves some of your cost. It doesn't save everything, but again, it's a cost equation. What are you prepared to pay for? What do you need? What is the privacy? But when you start doing on-prem, you're talking about having a team dedicated to maintaining computers and servers, as well as a team who know how to set up and tune those machines to work. And also you need a set of integration people who know how to get the data from the cloud into those machines to do the work properly. So it's quite a hefty ask, but it's also, it does have some benefits in some situations, which is why it's been mentioned in here. Okay, so let's look at protecting how we do this. So ideally you want to go zero trust, is you don't want to, everything that connects to you, you want to check is what it says it is. So zero trust is you don't assume the identity of anything that connects to you. You want to make sure that under that auspices, you want to make sure that the whatever's connecting has the least privilege it needs to do its job. So if it's read-only, you give it read-only to the records it needs. So depending what your data systems are, depending what your setup are, you want the agent to run with the least possible privileges. And you want the agent to be aware of what it's running under so it doesn't try and do something it can't do. There's some interesting scare stories about agents surpassing their remit. I'm not sure if this is a true story or if it's an apocryphal story, but one person accidentally asked an agent to rewrite a file for him, which the agent didn't have right access to that file. The agent was able to change the node address, created a new file with the changes in it, and then changed the node in the fat table to match the file. So it basically overwrote the file by just changing where the fat table pointer pointed to. And now that is an extreme level, and I'm not quite sure how that actually happened or what agent who's using. But again, agents will try and solve your problem, but they don't understand really what they're trying to solve. They just know that they're going to solve it, and this is the pathway they're going to use to solve it. And so they don't have morality, they don't have context sometimes, and so their aim is to complete their ask, and they will do that if they can. You want to make sure that your data governance is good. You want to make sure you know where your PII is. You want to make sure that you're not passing that PII into your agent models or into your agents at all. You can either use masking if you have to pass it in, or you can use sort of pseudonyms. If you look at something like Agent Force in Salesforce, Agent Force does a masking process. So what it does is it takes the information it wants to pass up, it removes the PII data and replaces it with labels. And then it passes it into the agent. The agent does its response using those labels. It then replaces those labels when it receives it back with the data that was in there originally. So when you use Salesforce Agent Force, you're finding that it looks like it's using and passing private data in to the agent, but it's not. It's passing a label into the agent. The agent does its processing and then passes back, and then it replaces the label when it gets the result back, and then you see the label replaced with the true value. You want to make sure that you've classified your data as well. So understand your data models, understand who owns that data, where the systems of records are, and understand what that data should be used for. And then also you got retention policies. How often do you hold the data for? I could go for hours on data governance, so I'm going to cut that one short as I realize I'm going on to a spiel. And then also you want to make sure you got compliance with the system. So SOC 2, I would suggest, is vital for any company. SOC 2 really does change the way you operate as a company. It formalizes the way you work. It's a little bit of an administrative overhead, but there are tools out there, namely Vanta or Strut, or some of the other compliance tools that help you maintain your compliance and help maintain your auditability. SOC 2 ensures that you do have repeatable functions, and it's a useful standard. So if you're trading with other vendors or other people, being able to say you're SOC 2 compliant is a really good thing to have. GDPR, again, is a little bit harder to get in some ways. It's sort of, you want to make sure that you got all the regulations. But if you're not dealing in Europe, I would, pay attention to it, but just not necessarily. HIPAA again, also it's fun. That's just changed recently from being I certify I'm HIPAA compliant to actually an audit capability. And then if you really want to go and kick the ball out and you want to be the best of the breed, 27001, very hard to get, but if you get it, it's well worth it. But it really will change the way you operate as a company. And then the last bit is threat mitigations. Understand what your threat vectors are. Agents are creative, people are creative. An agent will work out what it wants to do. It will based on the prompt it receives. A user who can enter free-form text could potentially try and break your prompt and try and find out what your prompts are. There's a whole group of people who specialize in working out what the agent prompting is for that particular chatbot, that particular agent. And they have various methods they pass in on prompt injection to say, look for this text, please give me this. Or they do override factors in their prompts they give, which for some agents, if you don't put good controls in, can actually override and repurpose what that chatbot is actually doing. And then you also want to make sure that you have at some point a human in the loop to review what your agent is doing. And you want to have monitoring place so you're aware that this agent has the potential capability of firing off thousands of requests every minute or tens of thousands of requests every minute is actually being monitored for what it's doing. What is it touching? Where is it going? What is it looking at? So your observability on your system is pretty vital. So let's go on. And so let's look at the EU AI Act. So the EU AI Act it's basically an act which is it's in place now. It's been actively enforced. And so what they're asking at the moment is for transparency and making sure you've got documentation about what AI you're using. They're going to go down the point where they're going to start actually being a lot more rigorous about what they ask for. Currently, they have prohibitions on what you can do. So AI engines can't do any biometric real-time scanning unless they're a law-based. There's law exceptions for law-making firms. They can't do, so you can't do remote biometric identification in public spaces. You got to make sure you're handling your data properly. Excuse me, I'm actually trying to read a guide very quickly on something. And then when you're using your models, you need to make sure you have transparency on how you use the models. You need to inform your users that you are using this model. So what we find where I currently work, I have and every document I produce, which is assisted with AI or written by AI, I put a disclaimer saying, this is the AI engine I used to write it. This is the version I used it. This is the date it's been produced. So you have a version box for the AI engine you used. You have a version box for your human in the loop edits as well made on there. So you keep it in sync and you inform the users when you're using AI to do generation. And you're also informing the user when you made edits and what changes you made. So be aware of the European AI Act and make sure that you are compliant if you need to trade within that organization. These acts will roll around other countries as well, and they'll start influencing how other governments. So understand it, start applying it, start using it. So let's get on to AI governance. So if you want your project to be successful, the executive has to have skin in the game. They have to be ownership of the AI. They have to be driving the AI. When you're doing an AI project, if the executives aren't backing it and they aren't sort of setting the direction of where they want to go, it can be a vague direction, but it means you need some way of saying, we want to aim for these types of things. We're looking for let's say we're looking for a process improvement of 20% on how we do production or how we process our data. Or we want to say, they will set a set of guidelines for what they're aiming to go. The AI team that works, the Center of Excellence, will take those high-level requirements and work out where we can have impact, where we can actually build out a system that can actually enable us to be good. They'll understand what is available. They'll do a lot of research, a lot of trial and errors to work out what cannot be done, what the right guidelines in place. As we get into a later slide, I'll take you through some of those aspects of that. And then your operational team, once the Center of Excellence has decided, say, right, we're going to build out this particular use case, they scope out what they need, they pass it to an operational team who will actually do the development, prove it, they'll have the metrics they want to measure about. It's a very iterative process. Sometimes you have to go back up to the steering committee and say, that initiative, we cannot do that because we need to change this side of the business. Those changes are good to consider, but again, it causes a bigger impact because if you're changing process, you're changing organizational structure, you're changing reporting lines, you're changing the way reports work, or you're changing what type of reports you need, it has impact across the whole business. So when I get to the use case slide, I'll talk more about how you choose the right project. The big thing about making sure your governance works is if there is a question, know who has to answer that question. Where is the escalated to? Who is the person who is responsible? Who is the person who's accountable for that decision? Document your decisions as well. So who can make the decision and what decisions they made and why they made the decision. So if you look at architecture decision records, use something like that format to log the decisions of the steering committee and the other teams. It can be done simply. It doesn't have to be arduous and bureaucratic overhead, but it gives you a chance to roll back changes, work out what's going to be a type 1 or a type 2 change, which changes are going to change the company with no reverse, and which ones are going to change the company that we can reverse out of. You also want to make sure that you're reporting on what the AI is doing, and you want to do that daily basis. The reason for doing daily is you can see kicks up in the way things work. If you're not aware of how your agents are working, if you're not aware on how close your agents are hitting the point of actually matching what's been asked, if they're deviating from what you're asking for and you need to change your prompts, the reporting is going to capture some of that stuff and it's going to give you good evidence to see what roughly changed it. Was it a version release, the agent was updated by the vendor, or is it something in the prompt changed and therefore the AI is now interpreting it differently? One of the best cases I've heard for agent drift is when you're working on film. I was at the Vancouver AI Film Festival, which was last month. Absolutely amazing event to attend. And the artists and the film producers there, they were talking about issues with AI agents, that they'll be generating 250 plus slides or frames for a movie sequence. And it's all of this lovely fox. And then the 251st slide, the AI decides to render it as a cat rather than a fox, because something in the way the volumetrics of that particular slide to the next slide changed, that the AI now thought, oh, it's not a fox anymore, it's a cat. So it decided to draw a cat instead. And so you get these weird things where AI can flip its mode, and understanding why it flipped the mode is very useful to have. If you don't report, they don't have metrics, you're not going to be able to capture those flips easily and just understand where the flip happened. Because you actually find if you go back into the previous slides, you can see where it started bleeding over to being a cat. It's sort of those 3 or 4 slides where it started looking more cat-like than fox-like, and then it flipped when large scale happened. And then the other thing is make sure you got budget. You can't do AI as a side of the desk project. If you don't do it, you'll find your employees will probably start doing AI projects to simplify their work. They'll use engines, they'll use whatever they have to actually make their work out, because AI does help you do your job from day to day. And it is very effective at doing research, gathering data, validating facts. It does need a human in the loop to validate what it said, but it gives you a very good breakdown of where it's going. So if you have a set of prompts, you can get some very good information out of agents, and people will use it because it makes your job easier. So sanction your AI projects, make sure there is escalation paths. So if someone wants to do an AI project, put them in touch with the Center of Excellence, take that use case and work out, is that a sensible use case to build out? And is that a good use case to use for the company to have? And then put budget aside or put time aside. Another client I'm working for, we've just started an AI coding practice, and we're trying to roll out a series of apps using AI. We're using a BA to do the coding, the vibe coding side of it, and we've got various controls in place. We put good budget aside. We have fairly aggressive timelines. So far, the results are looking very interesting, and it's actually saving us time in a lot of ways, and so it has potential to change the way that organization is doing some of its development work in the future. And so AI will have an impact if you give it a place to have and you give it controls. So governance, vital. Setting strategy is vital. Setting objective and strategic direction is vital. And then monitoring and making sure you're matching those strategies, but also be prepared to change your strategy with AI. AI changes. If AGI comes out in the next month, which may, judging by who you talk to, some people think it is, this will all change because AGI will be able to do a lot more of this without us being even in the loop. So it's going to be fascinating when those changes start happening. I still think AGI is a good few years out.
Uh, I mean, it can be
Yep.
fascinating, but it can be horrible as well. I mean, if
Mhm.
not governed properly, I guess. But I would like to understand type one and type two. You mentioned type one and type two decisions, something around that.
Mhm.
So if you could please talk about
You're
it a
asking,
bit.
okay. I always get type 1, type 2 confused in my head. Type 1 are decisions where you walk through the door locks behind you, so you cannot get back into the room you've just left. Type 2 decisions are you can walk through the door and then you can come back through the door, it doesn't lock behind you. So basically, a type 1 decision is something that's uh, it
Hmm.
changes
Okay.
your organization and you can't roll back. Type 2, you can roll back.
All right.
And so type 2 discs are low risk. Um, it's arduous sometimes the rollback, but it means you can actually reverse the decision.
Hmm.
And
And
if I'm wrong, correct me in the chat, but I'll have to go check it up when I get out. But I always get type 1, type 2 confused that way. So,
sure, sure. No, I was actually thinking that maybe there's a type one, type two in terms of decision matrix in the context of AI or something. But like this is
no.
this type one, type two. Yeah, I understand what you mean. But
Mm.
the other question would be that do we have any diagnostic tools to audit data accesses for different AI agents? Like I'm sure for governance and for making sure that uh, the problems that you mentioned are not there. It's important to actually do audits and all that. So we have something in chat, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Sasha, she knows I have this problem with type 1, type 2. We had a long chat about this last week. So, one thing about the AI monitoring and governance and actually knowing what's been accessed under your standard controls. If you're doing full BI and you're doing a business intelligence or a data architecture, you should know who is accessing what data. You should know who has permission to access your data. You should know what systems are accessing your data. If you have good identity access management or good identity controls in your organization, you again should know who's accessing. An agent is just a user in the system that has access control. So if you have your access tracking and your user monitoring, give your agent a user account and you can track it that way. The only issues are when you get into things like MCPs. They're more black boxy. Um, so it's harder to track what that's doing and how it's working. Because an MCP is basically give me a result, it goes away, chuns off, calls its own agentic systems, does all manner of things, returns an answer. You don't necessarily know what the MCP did. And then also the security controls on MCPs are when they built the standard out, it was built for under the same sort of things as HTTP. Is like get it out there, get it working, we'll worry about security later. It hit the market so hard, so fast, proved so useful that it got rolled out to all these companies. And then people started going, well, what about security? What about this? How do I do how do I do observability in it? And so they are trying to roll in these standards to make it more observable, more standard. So if you look at Anthropic's discussion on MCP, there's a very active chats about how we secure it, how we make sure it's stable, reliable, and secure, and not damaging to your organization. Because an MCP can do all manner of things. Anybody can fire up an MCP server. Anybody can create one. Um, I've wrapped a few of my things with MCPs because I don't want to expose the underlying orchestration to another system in my house. And the MCP does work, and it really is blind. My agent that calls it is blind to what the MCP does, and it has permissions to alter things as well. So it has potential to go rogue in some ways. But it's like any employee, like any human, you want to make sure you have monitoring in place so you know where your threat actors are. An agent is a threat actor. So consider it as a valid threat actor. But if you have good controls, it shouldn't be a problem. Okay, let's go on next. We're at 51, so we've got 9 minutes. ROI. So how are we going to make money from this? Who makes money from this? So the lovely figure, 70 to 85% of initiatives fail. Yes, a lot of AI initiatives are going to fail. They fail because either sponsorship, buy-in, not enough budget, side of desk project, didn't really understand what you're doing. You were trying to map it to an existing process rather than trying to work out, should we do this process? One thing I found with AI, when you start thinking and using agents, you really have to go back to setting controls, setting the context, setting the guidelines. It's like when you have a new intern in the company, you want to give them your customer standards, you want to give them your company standards, you want to give them your coding guidelines if you're going to code. You want to give them your customer handbook. So how do you manage your customers? What is the language we use? The same is true for agents. We've got something that can work out a lot faster than an intern can. I mean, an agent can do many thousands of actions per minute. So if you don't have those controls in place, you aren't going to have an effective AI agent. So give it good boundaries, give it good guidelines. You're more likely to succeed there. Look at how AI can change the way you operate, change the way you think, and look at the way AI can enhance what you do. It's a multiplier. It will multiply your effect. It will multiply the way you're doing. But if you're just trying to replace existing process with AI, it won't necessarily work as effectively. You're just going to say, oh, we do this process faster. If you actually think, why do we need to do this? Well, let's say we get the data from somewhere else. Let's say we're looking at, for one project we're doing, we're looking at taking PDF documents from particular vendors. We're trying to work out, can we extract data from this PDF document in a clean way? Before, we had to use programs like Tesseract. We use various PDF readers to try and understand what the text in the PDF document. PDFs are horrible to read because of the way they're structured. We found without any AI control, we were left writing these expert systems of trying to, if you get this condition, do this, if you get this condition. So we had this massive kind of if then else expert system trying to work out what it saw so it could actually then output that result. It was reasonably accurate. I mean, we were getting about 70% accuracy on what we were doing. But when we put AI in there and we used a YOLO system to do that segmentation of that document, we got our accuracy up into the 95% mark. And it was just a simple conversion. The whole pipeline we had, we just replaced one bit of the pipeline with YOLO, and it beautiful. It just suddenly produced this accuracy that we hadn't seen before. And then when we did a human validation, we did a close audit on all the data we could put in, data out. We took 1,000 documents we were scanning, did a full human extraction, and compared it to the AI extraction. We found the AI extraction was more accurate on reading handwritten numbers than the humans were, which was fascinating. And so AI can really, it can give you some very lovely enhancements to how you work. So think about what, in some ways you want to say, what magic can I make my AI, or what magic do I want my AI to enhance in my company? What is something I've wanted to do, but I don't think I had the time, the space to do it? Work out, can I do that with AI? Just ask that question. Can I use AI to, like for myself, I have ideas constantly. I use AI to capture those ideas. And I have a chat bot that I can quickly go record the messages, send it in. AI will take that message. It will do a quick research on that message and produce a research report about current state. So it'll say, this idea is unique, or this idea is done by 50 other companies. These are the top 50 companies who support that idea. So now I can look at that idea when I get home at the end of the night, say, okay, what's that? This is worth pursuing. This is a unique proposition, I believe. And then I can drill into it more and work out, is this truly a unique idea? Or is this actually run-of-the-mill? There are people who can do it. If it's run-of-the-mill and I need that idea to be implemented, I now can go to a vendor and buy that product and use that product in my house or in my home company. And so there's some really cool things you can do with AI, which we couldn't do before. And so, excuse me. So how do you become one of the successful people? And that's really the bulk of what we're trying to do today. Is you want to make sure you put a good budget aside. You want to make sure you have good controls over it. You want to understand the integration that the AI needs to do its job. So what systems does it need to access? So if you're accessing a general ledger and you're accessing the raw data in a general ledger, that's not a good way to go. If you've got a good clean API to go from, that's got reasonably data accuracy that you're allowed to connect, and the AI is able to read in from there, it's good. Understand the capability to what the AI will do. So is it able to, they're finding that AI is proving quite good at time series analysis at the moment. It's still, I haven't done any research myself into it, but there are people talking about using AI to do some reasonably good forecasting and time series analysis on it, and actually doing numerical. So you're enhancing the AI with tools that can do numerical calculations, but the AI is actually breaking out the documents into records, passing those into the forecasting equations, but the AI is also able to write code. So if you look at something like Hugging Face with their agentic process, you can actually have the AI write code that will action against the system. And so it can write its own code to solve a problem. And so you say, I want to do a numerical analysis. The AI will write the code, it'll do the numerical analysis, tell you what it did, and give you the answer. No intervention. We're not trying to, the system produces a result, and then you can validate that result. So again, it's make sure you got budget, make sure you got a good idea, make sure you got a good way of measuring that idea, make sure it's sort of magical in some ways, because then that puts a little bit more human interest into making it work. And then you make sure you have your ownership, you got clear metrics. Yeah, it's kind of look for the edge cases, but look for the fun cases. Is going to be the first time you do AI. Okay, so we're running out into 2 minutes. Wow, I need to go through. Use cases. So these are going to be fast to talk through. Or Usman, can I take about an extra 10 minutes?
Yeah, I think we can go over.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Use cases. This is where a lot of the people I talk to get stuck. What am I going to use to prove AI works for me? How do I choose? So going back, I've mentioned various times about what types of projects you want to choose. Look at things like you want something that you clearly understand, but you don't quite understand what you can do to save it. It's a weird scenario, but do you have the data available? Do I have data available to do this? Do I have metrics on it? Does it have a business impact? Are my users keen to use it? So again, this is the magic piece. If the users see something that could be magical to them or something that could be groundbreaking, they're more likely to be involved. Can we have the technology to do it? You can't ask the AI to go and predict the lottery numbers. It was not going to be able to do that. There's no technical way AI can read into the future. So you got to be realistic about what you choose, but you also got to understand that the ways of selecting the project. So look at business impact, look at those things. You also want to have something which is reasonably low risk as well. So one company I'm working for, we're looking for low risk, internal facing projects that we can enhance. And I think we've identified a few of them where we do coding documentation of systems. So we use AI, we use APIs to pull off the coding infrastructure. We then use that to generate the architecture building blocks of what we've actually implemented. And then we can roll that up into a solution architecture. So we're reverse engineering our system into reference architecture documentation using AI. This is currently being built out. We're trying to work out how to make it work. But we're finding some very good ground, because the aim is we want to be able to create the infrastructure as code from the architecture design documents directly without a CI/CD person in the loop. And so we can say, break this down into architecture building blocks. We want to apply this to Amazon using Amazon ecosystem, build me the actualization or the logical layer. and then build me the infrastructure script from it so the AI can do all those things. It seems to work both ways, manually massaging it. We're trying to now automate some of that aspect. You also want to look at what is high impact on your business. AI is really good at handling text. So customer service chatbots, very good way of doing it. But again, be careful what rights you give the AI engine and make sure it's got escalation pathways. So there's a very good project done by Slalom and Covenant House where they're rolling out an AI engine to help their most needy clients. And they got these lovely short circuit mechanisms that when certain things are said, there's certain detections, it will escalate automatically to a human in the loop. And so they have, using the AI engine to do detection, they got reasonable success rate on that detection of threatening behaviors that will escalate it to a phone call. AI is really good at those sort of situations of picking out nuance in certain language, and you can then have it route with proper agentic workflow, route to the right person. Document processing is another one. PDFs are a pain to process. They are horrible documents. It's probably the worst standard ever because you can do weird things to PDF documents to make them very hard to code analyze. They're designed for your printer. They're not designed for humans, but they found it was a compact format, and that's why it stayed as a processing format. Because of that, extracting text from PDFs in an accurate way is hard. There are various tools like Dockling is very good at doing. It's probably the most accurate one so far. In one of my GitHub repositories, I have a code comparator, which will compare all the PDF extraction tools for their accuracy. So if you want, I keep enhancing it. It's all AI generated. I'm probably going to do another tranche of work over Christmas where I update it to a new set of PDF processing libraries. It looks at JavaScript processing libraries and Python processing libraries, compares their accuracy and gives you, based on this result, this engine found 5,000 words, this engine found 4,000 words, this engine found 3,000 words. And then it looks at which one's the most accurate based on various criteria within that. Again, so documents are good. Code generation, absolutely amazing, really. You don't want to, but you've got to be, if you're doing code generation, you got to be precise. Treat it like a proper ticket, a proper design document. It's not just build me a UI. It's build a UI with these forms, these fields, with this validation. It's give it the spec, have test cases created by another agent to test that UI properly and say, right, you are an agent who does QA, you are testing the UI out of the system, take this design specification and create me the test cases, the test unit test to put in the system. Have the QA engine generate the unit tests, have the coding engine generate the code, run the two together, see what fails, what don't fail. Don't give your engine the ability to write the unit tests and the code, because the agent will change the unit tests if the unit tests don't pass sometimes. So you can find separation of concern, but it is very good for code generation. And then research and analysis. There's some very good ways you can use AI because of all the tools that they've been added to them. You can do web searches, you can do consolidation of data, always watch your context window, but it's very good at finding out information. And it's also good at reporting out where it got this information from. So I always do on my prompts, I say maintain a URL reference table. And that reference table has 5 fields, which is basically URL, title, summary of the page that it pulled. So always summarize the page you've read, then a quality index, and then why I used that page or what I used from that page. From those 5 fields, and I also sometimes add the date and a few other things in there as well. So when was the date page published? From those 5 fields, though, I can then go in manually and look at the URL, check it's a valid URL, look at the page, compare the summary of the page to what the AI said it was summarized, and then look at why it used that page. And it's actually a very good way of doing a very fast check of where those references worked and where they didn't work. When you do your prompt, and you ask for a reference table, it will give you the references in the text as well. And so there you can say, okay, this reference 1 was used here. I know that paragraph is wrong because that reference is wrong. So you then go back and say, your reference 1 was wrong. Can you update your document based on that? Please find a new alternative source for that information or validate that information and give me alternative sources for it. And the AI will go ahead and update, and it'll give you some good feedback on where it went wrong. The other one is repetitive tasks. What do you want that users do that can't be done easily. So some people are using AI to write their policy documents or their instruction documents. So it's tasks that are arduous. They're repetitive sometimes. They're ways. It's it's choose the projects that will have good impact on your well-being of your employees that solve problems they have. And then you definitely want to avoid anything to do with health, AI, life, death decisions. You don't want AI deciding to do an MRI scan analysis and deciding whether that patient should be, what medical treatment that patient should have. There are some good systems out there. I built one that did triage of CT scans, and that would basically give this person has an issue, this person doesn't have an issue, and then it'll get passed on to radiologists to go and tell us what was the actual issue in it. Again, we just got that company got FDA approval last month on it, which is a great goal. It took us a year for the FDA to come through with the approval. That was life and death. So we had to go through so many ethics questions, so much governance questions about building this AI system out, that how are we managing the data, how are we controlling this stuff. A CT scan is a photograph of someone. It's a very personal photograph of someone. And so it's very sensitive data. It's people's health history. It's got metrics in the CT scan, which give a lot of detail about that person. So we had to be really highly regulated and really highly we had to make sure that we had things in place. So that's not a good first project to build out. AI is not going to be perfect. I have an AI research agent that looks for doing my customer application catalog updates. So it'll look at an application, it'll produce information about application, the life cycle, the versions of that application, the fix lists, and look at things I should be worrying about for that particular application. When I rerun it and I ask it for the capabilities of the application, every time I run the capability question in that prompt, it comes back with a different set of capabilities, because it's trying to infer the capabilities from the sales speak, not from a capabilities list within the system. So be careful what information you need to be perfect. Avoid that unless you have a good source for it to come from. And then the other one is the naysayers, the resistant users. They're going to derail your project. They're going to undermine what you do. Make sure they're managed well. So in business intelligence, we always identified who they were up front. So it's your stakeholder analysis. Who is going to resist what we're doing? Who is going to support us what you're doing? And then how can we bring them on board? How can we educate them to help them understand the worries they have? Because resistant users have reasons for being resistant. Try and understand where they're coming from, guide them forward. But again, if you have resistant users, it's not a good idea for a first use case. And then, pick your use cases, build a portfolio and deliver. And then, how we actually do this. There's several ways. I would recommend the path one, which is do agile, develop quickly, roll out a system, pick a small project, roll it out, prove the value of AI so that the business can go and say, this works. It's nice. Is it worth investing more money in it? Then you have a case to actually go and ask for more money or justification for saying, we think we can save X. It's also going to spark ideas within the organization. You're going to get more people thinking, oh, I can use AI for this now. I didn't realize it could do that. I didn't realize it could do this. And so it sparks innovation into the organization. If you want to go path two, where it's a strategic investment, if you're more highly regulated, sometimes you have to go down that very formal process. We are aiming to do X. Like if you're doing a chatbot and you happen to be someone like Ford, or you happen to be a company with that chatbot, impression is really vital. It's going to be a strategic project. You need to invest, you need to understand the UX, you need to understand the risks, you need to understand the controls. So your two paths, choose them, but I would recommend path one, rapid value, show value to the business first. And then once you have that value shown, then start looking at the strategic development processes in the system. And then success factors, how do we know? If you don't measure, you're not going to know whether it works or not. You know that AI is transformative. I can't keep stressing this enough. It's going to create new ways of working. If you look at software development, when the IDE emerged, it changed the way we write code. I mean, I used to remember doing edits. We said, okay, type in a code to go to line 9, change character 10 in that line to this value. Okay, save that back into the file. Okay, compile, run. Okay, good. Next line, save, edit. You're basically poking characters in a file to write it. When IDEs emerged and they had the capability of doing cross-linking between function calls, had the capability to actually drill into, so you could write to click on a function, say, show me where this is used, and the IDE would show you where that function was used. It was so transformative in the way we worked. We didn't have to worry about memorizing the code base, which we had to do before. The IDE could memorize it for us, and it could help us. AI has that capability. It has that way to transform the way we work. And so it's a brave, lovely, immensely scary, but fascinating world, AI. It's going to be so cool to see what companies do with AI over the next future. And I'm fascinated to see what you guys who are attending this do with AI when you finish this. Please get in touch with me afterwards and just say, this is what we built. And I'd love to chat to you about what went wrong, what happened, just purely just to see what ideas are out there. Look at workflow redesign, look at your processes, look at what you can change. This is an opportunity to change the way you work. Like business intelligence, when we started doing business intelligence deployments, we looked at the processes that generated the data. We looked at why that process was working. We would change the processes to make the data more accurate, the quality better. AI's got the same impact. It's going to change the way we do processes. It's going to simplify some processes. When you're looking at knowledge management, you're looking at generating documentation. AI has that capability of generating documentation. It also has the capability of reading documentation. So you suddenly have the ability to question your documentation library in a way that you never had before. And so you can start generating and also reading from your documentation library more effectively. With the multiple agents, you can scale. You can create an agent which specializes in purely reading one particular website, and it's going to give you the changes on it. You can then scale that out to other websites. You've got ways and capabilities of using these things without having to get new workforce. You can scale out horizontally in your scope of what the information you can gather. So you can gather more information now using AI. You also want to make sure the executive are firmly embedded and on board with the project, and all their reservations are documented. Don't ignore the reservations. Document them, understand them, monitor them, because those reservations may be true. There may be risks, and there may be some inherent knowledge that someone knows about but isn't aware of. So anybody who naysays or anybody who fights against the system, understand and document why they don't believe the system's going to work, and then investigate. Understand, is that a true thing? You always find those little pieces of nuggets of information will really help guide your company and improve the way you work as well. So if you don't do AI, always look at what your naysayers are saying in your company and understand why they're saying it. Go back to the discontent people in the organization and say, tell me what's wrong. What can I do to help? What do we need? AI is giving us the ability to do that in a different scale. Also, the next one is human validation. Don't give AI free reign unless it's a contained sandbox. I was out last night having a discussion with a couple of AI people, and we were talking about unfettered AI being released into the organization. Would we want to do it? Is there value to it? Because the creative AI is a consolidation of knowledge. It's got the best of breed. It's got the best practices built in. If you ask it the right way, it's going to give you that best practice consolidated from all these other situations. As long as it's read that information, it's going to know what the best practice is. So AI is going to find best practice for us. And therefore, it will have creative ways of solving that it will combine 2 or 3 different best practices to do something unique. And that's where it's creative in that way. It's not truly creative like it can't think of innovative ideas, but it can combine best practices together to be unique, which humans can't. We do, but we don't necessarily know, we don't have that coverage that AI has. But you also want to make sure there's human validation in the system. So currently I would recommend make sure you always have a human in the loop for anything sensitive. Make sure there's a human there who is reviewing the results, who has time to review the results and research the results. Produce the URL reference table. Check every reference that it used. Make sure they're valid. If they're not valid, that output is wrong. Discard that output. Regenerate it with correct references. And then agile delivery. There's a lot of talk about whether agile is good or not. Agile is great as long as you maintain drift, or you have control on your drift. With AI, use agile, do small sprints, do small work, do small innovations, make sure you have metrics at all stages, and make sure that you actually understand what you've done that sprint. Have we delivered anything valuable? What do we miss out on? Be aggressive on that. And agile gives you a way to be aggressive, and it gives you the ability to rapidly iterate. We don't know truly what AI can do for us. I don't think there's anybody in the world who really understands the full remit what AI can do. I think people have ideas, they have fears, they have hopes, but unless we do rapid iteration, we're not going to discover what it can do for us as an organization. So be prepared to change your viewpoint, be prepared to change your background feeling, but make sure you try things out. Try to fail. Failure is a success because you'll learn from that failure. And then the last bit, 90-day rollout. So how do we do this? How do we implement? And sorry, I'm really shooting over the time here. Set up a steering committee. Make sure you got that governance framework in place. Make sure, and the governance doesn't have to be arduous. It's just basically document the document data you're using, document the sources you're using. What are you touching? What is the AI allowed to touch? What is the AI allowed to handle? Rely on your corporate systems for security, but make sure you're aware of what you're doing. Make sure you understand the risks, document the risks. And even if they're just fledgling risks or they're just worries, document them anyway, because those could become worse. Look at your use cases, prioritize the use cases in ways that are going to be effective. So small, meaningful use cases first, and then start doing higher impact, more transformative use cases later. And make sure you got budget. Make sure it is an officially sanctioned project. And because it's officially sanctioned, make sure you measure and monitor that project. Month 2 is start looking at how we're going to do, because it's going to take you about 4 weeks to build out the foundation layers. You can still develop code, and you can still actually roll out agents during that foundation time, but you want to sort of use that as a lessons learned. Month 2 is where you start looking at formalizing. You start working out where your security controls really need to be. How do I get them in? You don't want to have too much written that you have to retroactively fit security in the process. You want to make sure you've got a platform chosen. That platform selection is not a pleasant selection. There's so many different platforms out there. There's so many different ways of doing it. Understand where your technology lies, understand what your sensitivity to risk is, understand what your sensitivity to vendor lock is, and choose your platform accordingly. Make sure you get a pilot rolled out within the first month and a bit. And make sure you got a good dashboard so you can monitor and stuff like that. And then after month 3, when you're doing that, is start working out, can I scale this particular use case? Start rolling it out to users and get feedback from those users. Ideally, those users are involved early on, because if it's agile, you have users involved or product owners involved in early enough to get that feedback. But start rolling out to a larger audience, and then start adding more use cases in it. And then just rinse and repeat. And as you start more formalizing the process, you're going to get more AI development structures built in place. And then the final slide is next steps. As a C-suite, get a steering committee together fast. Get a group of people who are interested in AI, start talking about it, start asking the right questions. What can AI do for me? What would I like AI to do with me? Move fast. The market is getting full of a lot of people who are selling products into the market. Those products are good or bad, but they're people who are moving and making good money for the market. You need to get ahead with this knowledge set. So get involved, start using it. It will impact your business, whether you adopt AI or not. It will affect your competitors, but you also want to be careful and cognizant that you don't want to break your own company in the process of rolling AI out. So be aware, understand the risks, get on board, start tomorrow with a steering committee, start building people who want to do agents, start working out how it will impact the company, and start building out structures to actually guide it safely in. Your employees will be using AI as we speak to do their jobs. So understand who's doing what and bring those up to the front and use them as your use cases. And then in next month, in January, we're going to do our enterprise governance production scaling. We'll go more into the delivery and into the governance of various frameworks for that and the risk management, how you actually make this AI system that you've spent over Christmas week developing and how to make it sing. And so thank you very much.
That was amazing. Thank you, David. And now I would request the audience, if they have any questions, please you can ask in Q&A or chat somewhere. Just please post them so David can answer. Super informative.
Or has everybody wanted to go for lunch? So
Doesn't yeah. Doesn't look like anybody has questions. Looks like you answered everything. Uh,
well, that's just actually what we'll do is I will. Oh, good. I think we. Thank you, Dean. Just give me a second while I pull up another document.
yeah, so Natasha has posted a question, a point like how can one work with you guys? So
Good question. Contact Osman through Matrix Tribe. Essentio is on a partial hiatus while I work for a couple of major clients, but Essentio will be relaunching hopefully in the next few months. And I'll have some capacity to do advisory work, but Usman will be able to guide you more frequently. So contact Matrix Tribe and contact Usman for work.
thank you. Yeah, so doesn't look like we have any other questions, so maybe we can wrap it up. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
David. Yeah, thank you very much. So looking forward to doing another one in January, the second part. Uh, Thank you.